depending on how states were counting their votes, there was a flip in key states like Wisconsin or Arizona. This was, gas.
안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천을 해야 하는 동탄 왕호입니다. 오늘은 9월 15일 수요일이죠. 추석 연휴가 이제 얼마 안 남았습니다. 저는 내일 백신 2차 접종을 합니다. 그래서 이제 일주일 동안 운동을 못해요. 몸 상태가 좋았으면 좋겠습니다. 아프지 않고. 그래서 일주일 동안 운동을 못하기 때문에 오늘 최대한 운동을 많이 하려고 했는데 너무 피곤해. 진짜 왜 이렇게 피곤하지? 너무 피곤하지만 그래도 운동을 하도록 하겠습니다. 운동을 하고 선식을 먹고 샤워 다시 한번 하고 푹 자도록 하겠습니다. 역시 운동을 할 때 쉬어야죠.
Response to North Korea firing two unidentified ballistic missiles into the waters between the Korean Peninsula and Japan. These are the first ballistic missile tests by Pyongyang since President Biden took office, and it comes just days after they tested some long-range cruise missiles. Japanese defense officials say the North Korean missiles landed outside of Japan's exclusive marine zone. Coming up, new behind-the-scenes details about former President Trump's final days of office, the extraordinary, secret effort to prevent him from launching a military strike.
Plus, what Trump allegedly told former Vice President Pence the day before the Capitol insurrection, and a new warning about the resurgence of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan.
I'll tell you what excites me the most about electrifying the continent, and this is why we've got the push for electrification, is because we've got such a young population. Africa has got the youngest population in the world. The youth are the ones who are pushing. They demand that electricity. They will not sit and cook using a coal stove. They want to have the proper electrification. Not only do they demand electricity, they demand electricity that is clean and that is saving the planet, because they're the ones who happen to live on this planet in 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now. So that's what gives me the hope in terms of how Africa is going to be, because we're going to be going into a space where the youth are going to be demanding and directing what we're going to have to do in terms of electrifying the continent. We have to use the resources that we have in a very meaningful and reliable and sustainable way, because they will have to carry this continent forward.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster. As hard as you can, getting facts. It is critically important.
To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have great.
Certain breads are healthier than others. The secret is in the flour. A healthy bread starts with a flour that comes from whole grains. So think whole wheat, brown rice, oats, rye, or barley. And whole grains are loaded with fiber, B vitamins, and minerals. That's why it's better for you than processed white flour. And if you don't like baking, here are some do's and don'ts for buying bread from the store. Do read the ingredient list. Do buy bread with the words whole grain on the ingredient list. Don't buy bread with enriched flour, and avoid anything with oats. Fructose, glucose, all those oats indicate added sugar. And of course, anyone with a gluten intolerance should avoid breads altogether or follow gluten-free recipes and use almond flour, for instance.
We've missed the globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering the city's DNA.
I'm not being here.
Meeting people who will share its secrets.
Make it a fairy tale.
And making discoveries that wow.
Ay, ay, ay.
It's a world of wonder. Now go and see it. Saturday on CNN in association with Turkish Airlines.
Developing this morning, stunning new revelations about secret actions taken by Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley in the aftermath of the January 6th insurrection to prevent then President Trump from ordering a dangerous military strike or using nuclear weapons. Bob Woodruff and Robert Costa from the Washington Post write in a new book that General Milley, quote, was certain that Trump had gone into a serious mental decline in the aftermath of the election, with Trump now all but manic, screaming at officials and constructing his own alternate reality about endless election conspiracies. They allege that General Milley was so worried that Trump might, quote, go rogue, that he called a meeting in his Pentagon office and instructed senior military officials not to take orders. Well, what he said is, he said, you need to follow strict protocols. You need to follow the rules in place, and don't forget that I'm part of these rules in place. In other words, make sure you check with me first. He also allegedly made 2 secret calls to his Chinese counterpart to reassure him that there would be no military strike. Now, that action sparked backlash from some Republicans, military officials, and the former president himself.
If it is actually true, which is hard to believe, that he would have called China and done these things and was willing to advise them of an attack or in advance of an attack, that's treason. For him to say that I was going to attack China is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Joining us now, CNN military analyst Cedric Leighton. He's a retired colonel in the Air Force and a former member of the Joint Staff at the Pentagon. Colonel, when you look at this big picture, what's your takeaway?
John, it's really unusual. It's an extraordinary situation. Yes, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is always going to be talking to foreign counterparts, but to talk strategy, to talk a very reassuring tone toward his Chinese counterpart, General Lee, is highly unusual. And that really speaks volumes to how dangerous, if this is all true, how dangerous General Milley thought the situation was. He wanted to, in essence, to avoid a war with China at almost all costs.
So are you more concerned about what Milley is alleged to have done, or are you more concerned about what prompted these extraordinary actions that the book alleges Milley took? You had multiple administration officials who were worried about wars with various countries. Is that more concerning, or is Milley more concerning?
I think it's more concerning that what the president was alleged to have done. I think it's much more concerning that General Milley was operating in an atmosphere of uncertainty, political uncertainty, that he couldn't really trust the actions of the president. That is, I think, a very serious issue. And what General Milley did was really quite extraordinary, and basically in a good way, because what he was doing was defending the institutions of democracy. And that is, I think, the key point here.
Well, this is the gripe that you have from Senator Marco Rubio and others, is that General Milley called his counterpart in China. China was nervous. It's understandable why any country in the world might be nervous about what's going on in the U.S. Hey, it doesn't look stable there. You're making us a little bit jittery. So General Milley calls this Chinese general, in and of itself, not necessarily problematic, but the book says this was the conversation. General Lee, I want to assure you that the American government is stable and everything is going to be okay. Okay so far, right? Milley told him, we're not going to attack or conduct any kinetic operations against you. General Lee, you and I have known each other for 5 years. If we're going to attack, I'm going to call you ahead of time. It's not going to be a surprise.
That is unusual because at this point, General Milley is in essence talking about intentions, potentially revealing strategy, potentially doing some things that are not normal for a chairman of the Joint Chiefs to reveal to his opposite number in an adversarial country like China. But what General Milley was trying to do was reduce tensions. He was trying to establish trust or continue the rapport that he had with General Lee, his Chinese counterpart, and to make sure that as things moved forward and as things potentially became even more unstable here in Washington, to make sure that the Chinese understood that this is a U.S. matter that we're handling and that any types of actions that the military would undertake would only be undertaken under the strictest forms of control. In other words, the nuclear codes would be handled in the appropriate manner and things of that nature.
Is he saying, I'm going to tip you off, right? Or is he saying, potentially, look, if we were headed to war, you'd have some more data points between now and then. We would have conversations over time. There would be frictions. There would be things that would tip you off that things are headed in the wrong direction. Can we get a sense of what it was?
I think it was the latter. I think it was the idea that there would be so many things that you would see what in the military we call indications and warning. That's the kind of thing that he's in essence telling his Chinese counterpart. General Milley is saying, you would be seeing all of these things. As you fly, against one of the coasts of the United States, usually the West Coast, or you use your vessels to go look at Alaska or whatever you're looking at, you would see activity. You would see the U.S. getting ready to do something. You're not seeing that. So make sure that you stand down and that you don't panic your own political leadership in Beijing, and that you make sure that your political leadership understands that we have absolutely no intention of going after you.
Let me read another little part here. And this had to do with the meeting that General Milley had with other military leaders. And this is why I was so careful as we brought you in here to describe what he told them. He was telling them basically, follow the procedures. He said, if you get calls, no matter who they're from, there's a process here. There's a procedure. No matter what you're told, you do the procedure, you do the process, and I'm part of the procedure. This was telling them, if Trump tries to launch an attack somewhere, you need to tell me, basically. But there's a procedure here. There's two aspects of this. Number one, how unusual is that kind of specific conversation? Is he right? Number two, again, speak to the larger context here. You have one of the nation's top military officials so worried about the commander-in-chief, he's having to have these meetings.
Right, and John, the context, of course, was the phone call that General Milley had with Speaker Pelosi, where he was reassuring her in that conversation that we've got the nuclear codes under control. He's not going to be launching, the president is not going to be launching an attack without all the procedures being put in place. He's not going to be able to go rogue. So what General Milley thought, I think, after having that conversation was, okay, what we need to do is we need to make sure that what I told Speaker Pelosi is actually the truth. I'm going to reassure myself, and I'm going to look everybody in the eye around the table and say, okay, remember what the procedures are, and remember I am a part of these procedures. And being part of those procedures is absolutely in the playbook that the NMCC, the National Military Command and Control Center, they have. That's the node point where everything comes together and where orders of that type would actually be issued from for the forces like in Strategic Command. So what I think General Milley was looking at was he knew that President Trump had a tendency to call people directly, and he wanted to make sure that if some colonel or general got the phone call at the NMCC at the Pentagon saying, I want you to launch some missiles from President Trump, that person would say, thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me take care of everything and bring General Milley in at that point.
CC him on the email on
Yes.
the nuclear
So I always tell you.
Right?
That's what I always tell you in the office here. Let me know. Colonel Layton, great to see you. Thanks for helping us understand this.
You bet, John. Absolutely.
Coming up, we have more revelations from this bombshell book from Woolward and Costa, including details about the private conversations between President Trump and the vice president the day before the insurrection.
Plus,
I won't be your friend anymore.
I won't be your friend anymore. Don't say that to me, John Berman. Plus, new details about the anger that Trump still feels toward Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and who McCarthy told Trump to call the night before the inauguration.
Our challenge was to determine the best ways for our citizens and visitors to safely enjoy the Tokyo they know and love. Tokyo is a fascinating city that integrates both tradition and innovation. As governor, my first duty is to keep Tokyo safe. We cautiously monitor the global and local situation, consulted experts on safety measures, and began to apply new policies so Tokyo could begin to open. As we prepare for travelers from around the world to visit again, we look forward to welcoming you and hope these new measures make for a safer and happier environment for everyone.
The world's biggest business stories. From every corner of the globe. Marketplace Africa, Asia, Europe, plus all new Marketplace Middle East.
I'm Robin Curnow in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here? How concerned are you about the front line? You don't believe that there's a racial divide here. Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think?
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN. This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
The brand new book out from Bob Woodward and Robert Costa also contains new revelations about the ongoing tension between former President Trump and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy after McCarthy initially blamed Trump for the insurrection. Trump is quoted to